Welcome back, everybody, to Voces Mysticae. I always say it really mystical, Adam, because again, this is theater, like we were talking about before. Um, so, welcome back, guys. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the innovative intersection of mathematics and magic with Adam Blvck, the developer of the Spellbook app, one of my favorite occult applications that you can use today to help your occult practice. Today, Adam is hopefully going to share his journey as a passionate practitioner and creator of the cutting-edge technology that is the Spellbook app, hopefully revolutionizing the way magicians document their practices. And we're also going to go into some other stuff about the intersection, like I said, of math, magic, forms, and other great things. And we'll see how a man of physics and a man of stories can come together to talk about magic and give us a greater understanding of our universe as a whole and that paradigm and what we're doing to talk about that. So, as always, I'm your host, Frater O.D, and welcome to Voces Mysticae. So, Adam, welcome. I'm so glad you could join us. I'm so glad to talk to you, even
Thank
just
you.
take the time beforehand just to chat with you. And I can't wait to see what we uncover throughout the rest of this. But I want to get into it, Adam. Tell us about Adam Blvck. Tell us what brought you into esotericism, the occult, whatever label you like to use for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have our preferences there. Just let us know how you got into this and what brought you to Spellbook app eventually. You'll get there. Start with you.
All right. Yes. Thank you for having me, Frater O.D. So let's see. My name is Adam Blvck, and like my education is in computer science. I have a master's degree in computer science, been working as a data scientist for about 6.5 years. And then during the pandemic, I decided to pivot in my life a little bit, to started to question the foundations of reality, while also going deeply into esoteric practices. And I just couldn't allow myself to be very subjective while like leaving out reality. So I tried to ground my own reality by studying physics while also doing the study of my inner reality, the space of consciousness itself. So right now I am an app developer. I make like native apps like for Android and iOS. I make web apps, doing some enterprise architecture, some data science on the side. And yeah, I'm a spiritual practitioner. I like doing magic, and I like currently I'm on a mission to ground it, ground magic in mathematical notation. So you could say that the biggest reason why I'm currently studying physics is because scientists are these philosophers, especially when we look at history. There are people who have been observing phenomena, the stars moving, the planets moving, like lights moving up the sky, and they try to describe these phenomena using mathematics. It's a way to be very rigorous about your description. Mathematics is just a language, but it is very precise. When other people who don't speak your language come to see your symbols, they should be agreeing on what it means. And I'm kind of looking for the same thing for magic, which sadly is kind of lacking. And it's, the space shows itself, how it currently behaves. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Yeah, I think you're right on target there with that. The symbol set needs to be agreed upon. And what we're currently experiencing, not only within the occult community online, right? It's the world, right? And I've talked about this in the last couple of episodes. Reality is breaking down because nobody's agreeing on what anything means anymore. Meaning between words has become, take a word that's overused, for instance. Esoteric, right? That's a great example. It means 50 different things to 3 different people. And so how is it that we can talk to each other without having a solid meaning? So the symbols,
foundation,
the words, the
shows
language,
foundation.
it is we're at a Tower of Babel moment, really. So that's
interesting. That's an interesting analogy.
Very important for us to find what that language is going to be and learn. I think the art of discourse is missing as well. So the ability to talk and listen, right? Listen more than you speak, will help us get to a unified kind of idea of what these symbols mean. But
That's very
as you
good.
said, with math is very precise. Math
Yep.
is about as precise as symbolic languages, right? Our words are one thing, but the symbols in the underlying unconscious mind, like the collective unconscious, those speak volumes whether or not we understand them with the conscious part of our mind, no matter what, right? We see those
Exactly.
things, we understand what they mean. And so I think you're right on target with it. So how is it shaping up for you? How is
Mm.
it coming along with this assembly of a more precise approach?
I think you're on point there with your reflection. Um, so I just want to kind of vibe on what you just said because you said something very important. When you have a culture and two people within this culture try to work together, and no, they don't know each other. They are essentially strangers to oneself. What happens is that they check for common ground just to see if you're safe. And in modern culture, it would be something like what kind of clothing does he wear, how he speaks or she speaks, and to quickly judge the cultural, like if we are on the same page. Are you going to scam me, for example, yes or no? Are you friendly? Can I trust you? Right?
Right.
But we didn't have that, like say, like we always had it in a sense. But the most common, you could say, the most common ground that people shared with each other, culturally speaking, is religion. We have
Hmm.
been pumped stories into our brains by our culture, usually very religious ones, that give us a sense of guidance, how to act in certain moral decisions, what to eat, when to go to sleep, who to respect, who to neglect, things like that. Like religion gives an answer to everything. And when I say like two Muslims, I can agree on Allah, then like everything vibes. Yeah, everything's okay because we
Yeah.
share the same moral values. When two people say Jesus is Lord, it's like, baby, let's go fishing. I mean, I don't care anymore, right? Like we are on the same page, we are saved. And the problem is when a Muslim and a Christian then do the vibe check, like, I mean, they need to have something else going on for them because somehow one denies the other. There are like very peculiar subtleties to this whole thing, but that's the idea. How can we understand each other? And somehow it feels like, Facebook has cracked the code using, or TikTok, short format, 15-second videos brings us together. Football is another cultural universal symbol, like a ball, moving in a square around the field. Like somehow it
Hmm.
gathers us together, despite our differences in background. So from my study in religion, religions and esoteric practices, and whatever tradition might come up, there is always the notion of making a distinction where the sun comes up. Where is east,
Hmm.
where is west, where is south, north. Like we open the temples, for example, are always placed with respect to the directions. There is like always somewhere, like, I mean, just saying it would be like a bad sacred place if it wouldn't be taken into account like the directions, like
Hmm.
positions of stars, things like that. So it's very interesting how the four directions always link with a recall or an invocation of the four directions or correspondences to those four directions, which,
Hmm.
and its primary root is like the four elements, obviously. Right? We have air, fire, water, and earth. And of course, there is this quintessence, which makes one turn into the other, which is like the fifth element, spirit. Um,
Hmm.
but somehow, when I got this, that Christianity has this element, Sufism has this element, so like branches of Islam essentially. Judaism has this element very strongly present. And then you have like spin-off religions. Wiccans have them, you have the Hermetic orders. Egyptians also have very much like the invocation of deities in the four directions, and closing the space using those techniques. And like, doesn't matter where we look. Like if it can be African, can be Nordic, it can be like from something Argentinian, Mayan, doesn't really matter. There is this common ground. We have a common sun, we have a common moon, and we have a common seven planets, and we have almost the same sky every year, like for
Yeah.
thousands of years. So there is this commonality. And religions, the good ones at least, their priests, I think, saw the patterns. They try to tell them to
Yep.
people, and people are like, "What the fuck are you saying me?" So they came up with stories. Oh, see, so if you see them like the quick light of orange move through this clumping of stars to the sky, it means that you have been born in this way. So like, and then stories have been
Mhm.
invoked, and we have like created narratives essentially on what happens on the sky. But the sky didn't like last long. Then we had to fill up the earth. Like don't move between the trees where it becomes dark. I'm not sure, like mythological speaking,
Yeah.
there are enough stories that keep us in safety at bay from others. So, okay, say that, so I came now to the conclusion, like say I take the four elements as the baseline. So the four
Mhm.
elements can somehow open us up to a common ground of uh, yeah, just to a common ground. Quickly, I found that people have different meanings to the four elements. So even though there is a commonality to how people regard air, and especially if you explain it to somebody, there is always a feeling of, yeah, it's kind of arbitrary, especially the newly non-initiated people who didn't go through the rituals and didn't feel the elements in 3D, say. So there is no
Mhm.
training, as if there is no different, your aura or your inner
Right.
capability is not able to differentiate between the elements. So then suddenly the mystery school gets lost. We cannot explain it. You have to feel it, and that's kind of the problem. So yeah, with that in mind, I kind of started to get into the practice, trying to understand the four elements, trying to attribute the seven planets to the four elements, the zodiac signs to the four elements. And you can
Mhm.
create a system which partly is addressed by Aleister Crowley, partly by Ophir, partly by Israel Regardie, and there are so many people who have come up with systems to bind them together. But that didn't quite cut for me. Because, for example, let me give you this example, which is very informative. The tetragrammaton is, a very basic foundational thing in Magick. The tetragrammaton. It's a four-letter word, and especially if you like adding Hebrew letters to your magical system, it means a lot. Yohivahi. There is this four-letter word. Each letter in the Hebrew alphabet means something. So
Yes.
Aleister Crowley comes in along and he says, the tetragrammaton, the four letters of the tetragrammaton, they correspond to the following exact sequence. It would be fire, water, air, and then earth. So it starts with fire.
Mhm.
Hmm,
Yep.
interesting. But there are other systems. There are other systems which proclaim that it should be starting with air. So the yud would
Yes.
be air, and then the phi would be he. Uh, yeah, and then vav would be water, and then you finish again with earth. And then I found a third system which starts with water. So what I came to the conclusion.
It's very Egyptian for the water to start, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. That's
And
very good.
it's different based on the mythology, and I don't mean to interrupt you there too, but like I think the reason for some of that is that if we're not careful and we try to distinguish the four elements so deeply and like drive a wedge between them into nice little buckets, we forget that each one of them has all of those elements within it itself, within its own mixture, right? Everything generally,
Okay.
especially start with fire. Fire has within it the blueprint for all the other elements if you begin that way. And therefore, everything that pours from it has some of fire within it. And
Mm-hmm.
if you go to water, right? If water is the next level of form, which makes sense alchemically, fire, then you boil water with the fire, it becomes vaporous air, right? It's that second level,
Mm-hmm.
which then later on produces earth. Uh, it contains within it the image of the original, and almost like I'm going back deep into say like Proclus's statement that everything is within everything in certain mixtures from that
Mm-hmm.
Neoplatonic view. So even the elements would have like fire has within it some earth has within it fire, and so on. And so when we drive a wedge between them and really try to distinguish the superb differences between the two, I think we're missing some of the point. It's more like a what percentage of air is air, right? How many,
Mm-hmm.
or is air just made up of a certain amount of water, earth, and fire? Like, like there's, anyways, something that I've been exploring with too, with one of the pieces that I'm writing right now, is relating the four elements to the parts of the breath: inhalation,
Yes.
retention, exhalation, retention. Which
Hmm.
four to what, and mapping those within the Neoplatonic and early Christian mystical systems. I've really struggled with, well, how do I fit? It's like fire's first for me. Fire's got to be first. That's where I stuck my flag in it, and I'm like, well, water could be next, but also air could be next, and so it's
Hmm.
like
Yeah, yeah,
it's it's very difficult for us to pin those down. So I'm
exactly.
curious how you chose.
Very good. Very good questions. And I like it. I would attribute so inhale with fire because it's
Mm-hmm,
you're filtering. So you're the agent of a decision essentially. Then you hold,
mm-hmm,
meaning you open up space. You keep on space of possibility. So that's air. And then
mm-hmm.
water because there is the opposite movement of fire. So because water and fire are diff opposites which complement and fight and create and make change possible. And then earth, which is the like the absolute reference I have to breathe in, otherwise I will die. So because it's final. But
Yeah, and
very good.
that's where I ended up too.
Yeah, yeah, probably like probably interesting. So let's see. It really helps to um, So let me just like tell you first of all that it's very confusing, I believe, in the occult space that in the LBRP, the magician begins by invoking air as a first element. And in the East, you essentially draw a pentagram and you invoke it with Yohevai, which is the Tetragrammaton. So it's
Yes.
interesting how the most basic ritual starts with air, whereas the popular thalamic interpretation of the Tetragrammaton is interpreted by starting with fire. What I noticed
Mm,
is that these are orthogonal to each other. They are different formulae, and they're orthogonal to each other, meaning that they don't say nay to the other, they add
mm-hmm.
information and never change the
Yes.
other orthogonal. Um, so interestingly, when you consider the attribution where you start with air first, what you get is something like air is the first circle around you. You know, it's you have the alchemical symbol, which is like the upward triangle splashed, but there is a more universal symbol for air, which is a circle. It's like from Vedanta,
Right.
and it symbolizes possibilities, movement, rolling, smoothness. It's also the circle of the magician. You know, and some
Mm-hmm.
magicians say that this is your circle of influence. So as a magician, or say as a person on earth, you can do everything that's within your circle of influence. You cannot do anything outside of your circle of influence. For example, there is qualitatively almost nothing different between you and say Elon Musk, but Elon's Musk influence sphere is so huge that he can gather the resources necessary to fly to the moon, essentially, right? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
ours is very more specialized to our personal needs, like different people, different background. But interestingly, when you first consider your possibilities, your circle, then you have to choose one thing. And because of this decision that you do one thing, you say no to everything else. So, and this causes friction, focus, fire. Like, so the fire would be the
Mm-hmm.
second step. And that's also the second step in the LBRP. It's when the sun is highest. It's so high and burning hot that you cannot look at it because the passion set the day. You know, it becomes an obscurity because the moment that the sun is there, you have to live life here. You have to move, change stuff, like wait for the evening
Yes.
where things cool down, reality kicks in. You know, passion cannot be sustained. Reality kicks in. You have to cool down. So, so then you would be say, hey would be then water, and then the final would be vav. I mean vav he. So vav would be the nailing aspect of, I mean, manifesting the day essentially, and then habit building, sleeping would be the fourth. Why Aleister Crowley chose, most likely, fire as its first element is because he decided that as a magician, you should be changing the world first. You shouldn't be seeing the universe as something that influences you per se, like the possibilities approach. the universe comes at you. But you should be first doing what you want, what you will, and then you do it. You fight against you fire, water, you fight against reality, you make it happen, and then clarity emerges. The air gives you clarity of what you did, it gives you new possibilities because you did something. And we have the finality to it, the realization. But these are orthogonal, because the Tetragrammaton cannot be pronounced. And because it cannot be pronounced, it means that every letter happens at the same time. So your decision, the possibilities of space, and the work of the space all manifest at the same time as Earth. So it's like reality, and we all do the fire, the water, and everything. So what you said about mixing is exactly right. But still, we are able to differentiate. For example, a list of a to-do list is clearly a way to quantize what we have to do, in what order, our priorities. So there is obviously a range, a degree of freedom here that allows us to move around. So that's how I chose it. And we can go very deeply into this, honestly. But what really stood out for me is that water is opposite to fire, air is opposite to earth. So this gives you a sense of, first, like I just said, like a mathematical almost definition, where you can give a number or a symbol to each element. But then the question becomes like, when you multiply, or the equivalent of multiplication, like fire with water, what do you get? What is the difference between air and fire or water? And it's like they are very hard to answer. We almost like, it's almost like for a magician, it's actually very hard to do even the most basic things. Like, for example, say that you would like to manifest more money, abundance, and prosperity in life. Well, the first thing that comes into mind is, well, we should be invoking Jupiter. Oh, we should be invoking something blue. We should be wearing something with like gold glitters to complement the king scale. And then we should be invoking something with five. So maybe like five candle. So there is this force. Sorry, we have this. Magic gives you this corpus of subjective experiences that you named by a symbol, which you can then invoke as you need them. So that's what magic does. Magic is kind of like this. It gives you this differentiation capability to distinguish between different states, and also to be able to open a little window and then enter into this window and then become what you decided to create, this space. And what I'm describing right now, funny enough, is something that this beautiful, crazy genius person invented, which is a mathematical notation, and his name is George Spencer Brown. And he created the laws of form. And it's a mathematical corpus which start with the notion of distinction, a distinction. So you essentially have a white space, you draw a distinction, it would be a circle. And a distinction completely defines itself and separates the inside from the outside. A distinction says you are in the house, not outside of the house. A distinction.
Right.
And through two axioms, and there are two axioms, they are very simple. So let me just finish my sentence. Using two axioms, he was able to prove very clever and deep. It's almost like a rigorous attempt to explain Hermeticism as a whole, by giving us this calculus of distinction. So how can you calculate stuff using distinctions? Let's say I make a distinction here and a distinction here. How do they work together? Well, George Spencer Brown says that if you have two exactly the same distinctions, for example, Adam, then you made the same distinction. It's the same distinction, Adam. There is no difference between the distinctions. So that's the first axiom. So a distinction and a distinction equals one distinction. And George Spencer Brown, he likes to use this symbol. I'm not sure if you will catch it on camera. Oh, there you go. See? So it's like so this is a distinction. You could write it as a symbol, like a circle, something like an oval, like a square, but he prefers this notation. And crazy things start to happen when you start to nest these distinctions within each other. For example, what is a distinction of a distinction? And
Right.
it's a very philosophical, deep question. It might take like the odd person into a frenzy, but a distinction of a distinction, essentially, if you draw it out, what you can do is you just mark the spaces. So the first distinction has in and out, and the second distinction, the one around it, has labeled everything inside of us in and everything inside of it as out. And then you will see that the same space is called in and out, in and out, in and out. You can draw it on a piece of paper, it will become very clear. So when you make a distinction of a distinction, this is the space where you can create distinction, and the distinction itself vanishes. So it's almost as if George Spencer Brown gave us this calculus of how to think in terms of form. Form is first. We don't have a theory yet of form and energy. So how does energy move through form? That would be something that Magick might be giving us more. How can we, given a form, move through the form? But George Spencer Brown really focuses on the base level. Like anything in Magick is about making a distinction. You are the primary agent. You draw a circle around yourself, and then you
Yes.
distinct the east, and you distinct that from all the other directions, and then you build up by distinguishing even the subtlest feelings of the environment, of a person, of a deity, of an artist.
Your senses, whatever it
Exactly.
is that's coming to you.
That's right. That's right. And so George Spencer Brown, with his notation, he really inspired me to think mathematically, more rigorously about what we in Hermeticism often say, like um, binding the opposite, or encircling the sigil with a circle. It has a very specific thing. It does something very specific, to draw a circle around a squiggly line. Yet the rigorous corpus of this, and by the way, this book is very beautiful. It's called just like Laws of Form. It's a mathematical book. It's very rigorous, and it's full of proofs. But it has a big section with, how to say it, like philosophical inquiry into what he actually created, because then you can take it all the way. You can think in terms of who made the first distinction then. You know, so because we are a distinction, because our parents made a distinction, they kind of came together, and I came out of them
Hmm.
to, through that collaboration. But evolutionary speaking, if you go back, we say that physicists say, okay, so the Big Bang was the first thing that happened. There is no time, no space, nothing before the Big Bang. So often people use the word, like the three-letter word God, to describe the first distinction. But the
Right.
notation, the whole calculus tells us that the first distinction and our capability of making a distinction from the environment makes us also the observer of the distinction.
Hmm.
So what you said before our call began of us being divine, there is divinity in everything, the essence is there in bits, but always present, is described formally, I cannot stress this enough that this is something that everybody who just studies and accepts the axioms will come to that conclusion. And
Right.
it is beautiful that you are creating your universe by creating a distinction. And other people create
Hmm.
their distinctions, and there is this battle of the magicians, the battle of attention.
That's, I mean, that is really what we're doing, right? The act of ensconcing yourself in a circle, creating distinctions in order to find greater and greater subtleties and greater quantitative and sometimes qualitative differences is what magic is all about. It's mastery of distinction. If I
Exactly.
know the qualities and the quantities, I can therefore now begin to manipulate. I can start to manipulate the
Perfect.
realm of form. But, right? So, what's that before form? The ungraspable foundation of being. Being is one of those things that cannot be distinguished. You cannot distinguish it. You can't break it apart. It's a unified field, right? And so that's one of the struggles, right? We go into this and we're like, I'm going to become master of all knowledge.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and to a certain extent you can, but it is almost a directly antithetical approach, because magic in and of itself is grounded in duality. It's grounded in separation. It's grounded in finding those distinctions first, I think. Secondarily, I think once you pass a certain point in your magical praxis,
Hmm.
it's no longer about distinguishing, it's about finding the common threads and
Exactly.
following those threads back up to the
Exactly.
source. And the source is being, and that's the one distinction that transcends form, right?
Hmm.
It's being first, form second, which is why I've always thought, fire, water makes a lot of sense right there as the first two elements, and why they would be grouped as such, right, as opposing forms. From those two, when they come into interaction, you get air and earth. Once those two come into, conflict, let's just say,
Mm.
or they spread apart from each other. Like
Interesting.
fire impregnates water. Water takes on whatever shape. Water is the perfect element for form because it is a container, and it molds to whatever containment it needs to be.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think there's a great deal of wisdom that you're sharing with us here with this mathematical law of forms, and it's very similar to Plato, right? There's the first hypostasis, right? The first cause, which would be the first thing being,
Hmm.
and that's one. That's your number one. Or even sometimes you could consider zero if you go back negatively as the first thing. And they do that ad infinitum. It seems like either neoplatonically or kabbalistically. There's levels of negative of theology, but that first, I always attribute it in my own work. One is being, and two is form. One then extends itself outward from a point, which is just a circle, into a line, or it expands out from itself into a greater circle, like you said with your distinctions, is very much Plato's law of forms. And within that first form is the containment for all other forms. Every form
Mm.
is embedded within the original form. So being first, form two, and then it just keeps within that triad, boom, 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 boom,
Producing
more and more
forms.
and more and more. And it's just
Ever
and for
complex.
eternity too.
Yeah, yeah,
For
yeah.
eternity. There's no stopping that train. Once that thing went, that's
That's how
and
it
that's
looks
one of the
like.
I'm not a physicist, but whenever I hear people speak about it, and usually what you hear is not educated folks talking about the Big Bang. It's like, well, what about when it comes back in on itself? And I'm like, I'm not convinced from my own experiences within mystical trance, things like that it ever would.
Yes, yes,
Now,
yes.
mathematically, somebody else could probably disprove me, but from my own personal gnosis, it doesn't feel like this thing's ever stopping. It's just
Well,
gonna.
just saying, but the most prominent physicist of our lifetime right now, Roger Penrose, a Nobel Prize winner, and he's a mathematical mathematical
Mhm.
physicist, and he, derived the necessary equations proving that the universe is omnicyclical or epicyclical, so it never ends, and that the Big Bang just seems like a dot because space-time stretches to a point. But if you would
Ah,
zoom in the past, it would still be a point. The horizon point would always be
just
a point.
forever.
So we are just skating along this wave, and the Big Bang would always be defined as a Big Bang, and the future will always look like, oh no, entropy hell. But the universe will exist forever. I mean, that
Right.
honestly, that would be the best interpretation right now, personally, and for the whole human race. Like
I agree.
practically speaking, the universe will exist forever, and even in the minutia details, it basically is the same thing. Like nobody has
Hmm.
an inch of interpretation of what a billion years means, right? Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean,
Even the word eternity is such a loaded term, right?
that's
For
true.
talking about
It's a lie,
forever. What does that mean to us when we are literally, oh, maybe not literally, I'm going to choose my words very carefully because I'm sitting across from a physician or here, I think it's interesting too because we're being, and if being is eternity, then time is moving through us. We're
Mm,
not going anywhere. But
exactly.
time
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
producing that perspective of we're moving through things, we're moving through space. I'm
Yes.
having all these different perspectives, but if the if you've ever meditated to a certain point, you realize that I'm not moving anywhere. There's nothing but this
Exactly.
moment right now. I'm in eternity
Mhm.
right in this second.
I want to touch on something that you just said on the
Go
Platonic
for it.
solids, the Platonic theory of form. Um, so look, I'm not a I don't have a major in philosophy, but I do have my own equipment. From my personal understanding is that the theory of forms by Plato addressed the question where properties live, in what space. So say
Mm-hmm.
you have two objects and they are obviously not the same, they are different objects, distinguishable objects, and they share a property, like for example, the color red or the size of
Right.
2 feet, like two, I don't care actually, but where do these properties live? Are they part of the object or are they
Mm-hmm.
like what is the nature of the property? Like if they live in a different space, what is the nature of their existence? And Plato essentially argues that for every shape and form and object that you can distinguish in on Earth or everywhere, has an ideal counterpart, which is ideal, and it lives in
Mm-hmm.
divine, omnipresent space. It's almost as if the perfect circle is always present whenever we create, I mean, a screw or something, or like something that's round.
Right.
Whereas, but and so yeah, a triangle, for example, like anything that's in a computer graphic is made of triangles. So a triangle has this ideal triangle, but if you try to make it real, it will be imperfect. So there is this. That's kind of how I understand the theory. It's a very good theory, but
Mm-hmm.
it seems as if George Spencer's Brown work goes deeper because it almost
Oh,
says,
naturally.
yeah, yeah, because it
The
almost,
distinctions.
yeah, yeah. It's
It's
just,
a
you have to.
distinction from Plato. He's going to naturally be more refined, right?
I
There's
hopefully.
no way for us to not be. We would hope so.
That's
I
true.
mean,
That's
Plato was
true.
a wrestler, man. He was just a wrestler. He doesn't have the mathematics behind him for this. Let's give Plato a break here, man. I'm just
I'm just bashing an old guy who was already long dead. That's good.
but no, go on, please.
Well, let's see what I wanted to say. Oh, something like in the notion that laws of form by George Spencer Brown somehow teach that there is no ideal form. The observer who sees this world, he becomes the world by making a distinction himself.
Mm,
So it's almost as if the ideal circle is a lie. It's almost as if this is another distinction made by this agent, like this distinction. The first, like the person who is distinguished by skin, for example. We are distinguished from the environment by our skin. So it's a lie how we judge what a perfect circle might be.
mm-hmm.
And it comes out of our form, the need for a circle. And nature probably doesn't lie by even having the sun an imperfect sphere. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
just imperfect in nature. Even like an electron, you could say, is has no dimensions, isn't a sphere. And one more thing, you said about like you said something like we start with space and then we have a dot, and then we have a dot with like extra dimensions to it. A dot is essentially a distinction which emphasizes the outside. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting if you draw a dot on a piece of paper, what you're actually saying is, look how everything else is not the dot.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're saying by drawing a single dot. Um,
Well, and that's very difficult for the intellect can't grasp it, right? And you go back to some of what these other guys are talking about in like the Neoplatonic, which is my vein that I've been really diving into of late, is that
mm,
yeah, you can conceptualize this all day long, but
that's
you're
true.
never going to
Yeah,
grasp it. You're never going to grasp
absolutely.
it with the intellect. It's
That's
beyond
exactly
what's
right.
intelligible. It's beyond what's intelligible. So you can't. It's like trying to grab a cloud with your hands. Yeah, you see it's there. You may feel some of the vapor, but you cannot contain it. You cannot
Exactly.
put it within a container. And
That's
so
right.
you're right. You're absolutely right. So we are essentially we're trying to describe what's ineffable with imprecise language, and
That's
you can't
exactly
get there.
right.
Even
That's
mathematically, I'm afraid we'll fall short.
that's true.
But we can
That's
become
true.
more precise for our work here in duality
Well, the
as we're
good
in
news.
this space.
Sorry, I'm so excited.
No,
That's
you're so good.
that's very good because if we are gonna live for another 10 billion years, and if you kind of believe in like maybe not per se incarnation, but the idea that we have a shared reality with other people who are essentially the same as you, but different history, different background. That's the difference. Um, I would love to put down an annotation which will bring the future generation of humanity a little bit closer to understanding what the whole thing is about. I mean, we have beautiful physical theories, like amazing. It's so good. We have electromagnetic force so well under control that like the tiniest pimple that you can see on my forehead for today is captured electromagnetically by the webcam sent overseas, to this beautiful person, and we are having this podcast being uploaded to a platform which has so many electromagnetic billions and billions and billions ones and zeros stored perfectly on hard drives, on cooled, ventilated supercomputers. Like I'm just saying, like electromagnetic force is
It's
just
incredible.
under control. It's insane how well we understand this thing. And at the same time, it's not compatible with gravity, like quantifiable gravity. We have like the whole theory, the standard model explaining everything, except, everything else. It seems like it. Everything else that's big, huge, insane, that's not explained. Like, for example, the shape of galaxies. Like we have no idea why the shapes of galaxies are the way they are, why they spin the way they do, what dark matter there is, why stuff is clinging together when it's very big. But on a like medium, mediocre level, like almost not the smallest, we have everything under control, like microchips. We can like kill all living beings on the earth, like no problem. We have electromagnetic and strong force.
No
We
problem.
under control, like we got it, guys, we got it. But like simple issues like collaborating, understanding each other, communication, like the subtle energy somehow is missing. And I'm not sure if mathematical notation or physics will help us to like, guys, this is the answer. Because, the moment that somebody like a priest will like say like, guys, I found the equation, like the whole
Hmm.
universe would stop existing because this equation would explain everything. It would become the light, it would become the light, the way, everything. And
Hmm.
differentiation is not possible anymore because truth with a capital T, it's it's a ceiling. It's the absolute ceiling of the most absolute that you can think of. So we are like truly, honestly, we're just iterating, inching away for painstakingly inching away forward to understanding the world through physics, through magic, even I would say like magic narrative, what we are actually doing, why are we doing it? Which I think, by the way, gets us into journaling and why journaling is so important, because how else will you make sense of this whole thing?
Well, I think there's a lot from what you just said there, and I'm gonna go ahead and take a page out of Earl Fontenelle's book from the Secret History of Western Esotericism podcast. I'm gonna ask an irresponsible question.
Okay, let's do it.
Should should we be trying to dial in distinction in the ways that you're talking about, those big questions? Is that even the point of what we're here to do? Is that our
Mm,
purpose? Or is in some way that a massive distraction from some of the other work? You said, well, some of these other things that we're not doing, we're not able to collaborate very well with each other. We're not able to come to agreements on terms because we're
mm,
asking the wrong questions. We're asking
mm.
questions about the domination of nature, of the natural cycles of the world, about literally going into the
Shit.
quantum. I just said a naughty word for one of the guys in our Discord server, but to the quarks and the tiniest pieces, and we're penetrating it like a Zeus phallus, just like I will know your secrets, mysteries. and
Yeah,
yet we
exactly.
can't talk to our neighbor. Like, we have
Hmm.
anxiety about picking up the phone to answer a bill collector. Like, maybe we're asking the wrong questions here, and the reason that the other questions are not revealed to us is because there's no end to those questions. We can, like you said, in describing trying to find that point, it's always going to be a point.
Hmm.
Trying to find the Big Bang, like you were talking about earlier, I'm never going to find its genesis. And so my continued quest, this myth of progress to find all of the secret nature answers, is really a fool's errand.
Yeah, but
and
fortune
and
favors the
as
fool.
magicians, don't we, it's true, it is true, but as magicians, and I think you were getting to this, defining our meaning, specifically our own, and how that relates to other people, that is the work. That is the grand question that you're here to answer for yourself.
Mm.
And luckily, some of those other irresponsible questions that we're asking about nature have led to this wonderful thing like digital record keeping, including the Spellbook app, and how something like that can get you into a deeper sense of asking the right questions about self and not necessarily the external world.
Exactly. I agree. Well, um, the correct question, which I've been contemplating every year since a good 6 years, I think, was has been always influenced by teachers, which give me ammunition for contemplation. And your contemplation in this
Mm.
sense is very interesting because you can hold a simple keyword, like the word of a deity, for example, or a quote or a question in your mind, and somehow it changes the mind space, attracting ideas. And contemplation is this idea of you can hold a question in your mind and it attracts opportunities and maybe new questions, new ideas. And, I've been contemplating this question, how can I be of the greatest service to the whole? So not how can I help everybody or how can I, satisfy everyone or something, be a friend of everyone, but it's more of a sense of like, say that I am fully myself, like 100%, and there is no interference of my ego in my unique process. Would I be as perfect of a human being as a tree is right now that's growing outside? Because a tree does not like interfere with being a tree, right? A cat is kind of like 100% a cat. There is like little interference happening. A cat will always be a cat, but a human being has plasticity to it. We have a brain. It's plastic. We can change everything. We can shape our environment. We can burn things. We can cool things. We can heal things. It's incredible. It's hard. So suddenly knowledge came in. Ha ha ha. Timekeeping came in. The measurement of space turned into the measurement of time, and now we're stuck between the 5 minutes. Like, what should we be doing? Oh shit! Like it's insane how fucked up we are in this regard, right? So,
Perspective's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
exactly right, exactly right. So the correct question might be something like, how can I be of the greatest service to the whole? So say that I would be fully doing something which would be benefiting in my vision, the whole thing, like the universe being itself, then I would also be from fully myself. The thing is that the moment that we start asking these questions, that suddenly the hidden walls of perceptions like they get erected, and they guide us away from this question. Time to go back to safety, my little friend. I
It's
mean,
true.
right? That's kind of how it feels like. And it's very subtle, this subtle energies almost in our mind, erected walls, traumatic maybe even, and they cause us to suddenly be pissed at somebody else because they hurt me. Like it's insane. If you really like make a distinguish this correctly, it's almost as if yeah, you make me feel bad for something that you said. It came from you. Like the I hurt in my body. It came from somebody else. That's kind of what we say when we get victim, like moody and triggered, essentially. So the big work is essentially, can we catch ourselves in our shadows? Can we catch our little sneaky patterns which protect us from irrational fears which hold us back on our, our great work, our path, our uniqueness, our individuality. And let me tell you, there are plenty, there is enough stuff to be healed for, I think, millennia for humanity. And Spellbook, what it tries to do, Spellbook is this little app that I created, which is essentially like a social media app. Now, whoa, what? Like how? So it's a social media app, but meant for exploring your inner space more regularly. It's essentially like a note-taking app, but it feels like social media. It provides you with a newsfeed about yourself. So it's you open up the app and you see a feed. It's like, oh, what did I say 2 weeks ago when I was drunk? What did I say 3 months ago when I was pissed? What did I amazing idea 6 months ago after a breakup? I don't care. Like it's plenty of stuff in there, and the algorithm within the thing is modeled, at least inspired very hard, like very well by social media algorithms and how they try to give you the correct thing to keep you hooked for a little bit longer. But instead of redirecting the attention outside, like how can I feel better for a short time by watching a short time, the question is how can we be reminded of what my ambitions were, what my ritual was about, what my dreams were all about. So this app is essentially like this fountain of self-discovery, right? You put in your journal, you react with yourself, and you speak essentially with yourself. You interact with your own ideas from the past, but through the framework of the 4 elements. So nothing in this app gets in without being first categorized in the 4 elements. And whatever like it might be, oh, you saw something that somebody else said, like a quote, it would be earth. Oh, so you want something to do, you're passionate, that would be fire. Oh, there is like this emotional shit going on whenever this thing you wanted to do something, fire, and something came up and it hurts. A trigger maybe, you're working through something, water. See, and air would be like this, either the realm of possibilities, a list, it might be ideas. And each of the 4 elements obviously get then like split up again into 3 planets. But that would be like advanced spellbook work. But that's kind of what I'm building. I'm trying to really build this app for putting self-discovery on steroids. That's the idea. And hopefully this will do something with us.
I think so. I mean, this is the main reason I wanted you on the show was to talk about this app, and then I found out that there was so much more to talk to you about, and so thank the gods for that. But this app really is incredible to all the listeners, all 24 of you at this time, but soon to be more. But the thing is I think it's incredibly important for a number of reasons. And number one, identifying what is yours and what is someone else's externally from a digital device is so needed right now. It becomes really evident really quickly upon opening the Spellbook
You're so good at this.
How bad we are at analyzing our own thoughts. I crave external stimulation. When I open this freaking thing, what I'm looking at is like, feed me, baby. Feed me. Come on. And I opened up your app and I looked at it and I go, I have nothing to say. I'm a writer. I'm a talker. I'm like, I have nothing to say to myself. 0 things to say to myself. And I'm like, I am so programmed, absolutely programmed to consume rather than to fully create within myself and to identify which thoughts are mine and which thoughts came from somewhere else. And what I think one of the most beautiful facets of the Spellbook app is it will very quickly, after just a few uses, you'll be able to identify where that stuff's coming from. You're like, you know what? That's not really me. That's an opinion about a political stance that somebody else posted. That's an opinion or an assumption I made about somebody else's character. That is something that came to me from my ancestors or from my peers, something that I was taught by society. That's not me. That's not what I'm. That's not my. That's not me. That's not my. My meanness.
Essence. Yeah.
You know. It's not my essence. And so you get down into the nitty gritty of the self. And this is very difficult work. It's like setting down to a journal in a world where we're so used to putting on our social media face, right? Like my face in this podcast is Frater O.D. But then when I sit down as my mundane self, I'm like, well, who the fuck am I really? Like, you
I
go,
know.
and then I'm like, and it's a challenge, and it's a good challenge. It's a very good challenge too, because there's also the magical element to it. And so when I first sat down, I was like, I'm going to try and get in tune with my thoughts. And then after a while of doing that, what came out of that was I can start to harness these thoughts, these feelings, put them into little categorical buckets and say this one belongs. And I started using it in a way. I would generate an AI image of, say, like Athena, and I say anything that has to do with internal wisdom, I'm putting in the sigil bucket of Athena, and I'm going to collect them all in that way. And they'll work almost as like a magical container for me to shoot it out whenever I want to. Everything that's wisdom based is under this sigil. I look at this sigil and I'm brought right back. I'm brought right
Yes.
back into that mind space with whatever I've gotten in that time. And then the other facet of it that I really love is, like you said already with the algorithm, is being able to look back at my past, which is so vital for us as occultists, because memory is such a fickle beast. Memory is, this is why they harp on us to keep a digital record, a record of some kind of your work, to see how you've changed. Because it's very easy for us to forget where we've been, how we've come from, where we've come from, all those things. And you get lost in the weeds really quickly about who you are and where you've come from. And so this is also a solution within the Spellbook app, and say, I have grown so much since that drunk text, right? That you did to yourself. Like for me, I no longer have to worry about that as someone in recovery. So I don't have to worry about my drunk text to myself, but it could be the one where I'm triggered,
Hmm.
where I'm like, you know what, that keeps popping up. That's a pattern I need to address. And
Exactly
in a
right.
magical containment field like the Spellbook app is, I can start to transmute. I'm going to use the word transmute instead of
That's a
chip away, because I'm
that's a
not
good word.
surgically removing it. I want to take that energy of that trigger, and I want to bring it into a different form.
And transmute it. Exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
You're so good at using words. Just let me tell you. Transmutation
Well,
is
I
the
would hope
correct
so.
word. It's the exact word because we shadows are fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Shadows are fuel. They're stuck energy. They want to be something. I mean, express themselves creatively. But there is
Mm-hmm.
this. We keep looking at it from the left or the right, and we should be pivoting and like putting the energy behind us essentially, and be like, let's transmute it. Let's turn it into gold. I wanted to touch on what you just said, which was something like how easy it is for us to forget, you know, and just saying, but this is the secret also for magic in general or the occult work. If you don't forget and let go, then it will not manifest. You have to,
Mm-hmm.
that's why we close rituals. So
Mm-hmm.
forgetting is an essential key part of manifestation. So how the fuck will you ever compare or know if it happened if forgetting is a part of having it? So that's why recording is so important. Because a good
Mm-hmm.
magician will say, good, let's go. I want this. Whatever might be the trick that you need to change up the Rubik's Cube of your mind to manifest this thing. But this essential final dot after your sentence or the amen or whatever might be your trigger to finish things off cuts off your intent space and it leaves you. It moves into the
Mm-hmm.
chaotic world of possibilities, and now here you are, average Joe going back to work. But things will move, things will change. But how will you move, or how will you know if you don't look up? If you haven't kept a little record, I did this. That was my intention. That's how I felt about it, and then that's the end. You will never know. You will never know. And I'm so surprised myself, like how many rituals I did in my life. Like, it's insane. I have like just to give you like this is about like 1/4 of my collection, and it's all rituals, it's all wisdom downloads after ritual, and it's like A4, A4, 250 pages each. And like for me, this is like the best thing ever. I will never get bored because I get back in time. I get back in time, and as you can see, it's a physical record. But my Spellbook
Mhm.
digital record is just as rich, maybe even richer, because it's enhanced with demonic technology. From like I'm not into demonology, but like we are enslaving computers, honestly. From the
Yeah, right.
depending on how you look at it, we are abusing almost energy to make us more comfortable.
And in ways abusing ourselves
Yeah,
as well,
as a result of it,
long in
that's a problem.
process.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
As a result
I
of
think
abusing technology, we abuse ourselves.
that's 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 so relevant to time today too. And I think another feature of the Spellbook app that's vital is in that record keeping. What I see most often in the occult community, especially online, is someone gets an idea for a ritual. They talk about it ad nauseum with other people that they don't know, and then they go and do the ritual, and then they go and they immediately tell everybody what they just did.
Yeah,
And to me, that just breaks the containment field of your entire ritual.
it does.
And then they're like, why didn't it work? Well,
Exactly.
like, first
Like,
of all, you're supposed to release the desire for it in that process. And so there's a caveat to this too, right? Like, so we say you've got to write down what you did and then divorce yourself from the desire, the attachment, or the assumption of what is going to end up being for you.
hmm,
That's a very difficult thing to do, because if I'm notating I did this because of this reason, right? I almost stopped doing the because of this. I said I
hmm,
did this thing.
yes.
I did this ritual. My aim has been kind of just like completely eliminated, because for me at least, I am less and less interested in results based magic. Like, as far
Okay.
as I want to manifest this money. Like, I still have
Oh,
that
that's what you
in
mean.
my
Okay,
weekends.
yeah,
I
yeah.
still work on it, like material gain, those sorts of things. I am more open to, I'm doing this ritual and I want to see what the hell happens. I don't care what it is. I want to know
Hmm,
what it is, because that has been, in my experience, more rapidly transformational, to not try to control what it is that comes or is born from the ritual. Because if I try to self direct it, I learned very quickly, as somebody who's in recovery, when I drive the bus goes off the cliff with the kids and me in it. Like, so I'm entering into it from a different perspective of, I'm doing these things and I am immediately divorcing myself from any idea about what is supposed to come out of it,
hmm,
and any desire, as quickly as possible. Now, it's not perfect. Obviously, I'm still a human being. I still have all these things that I want to come of certain things, or I might assume or dream of. But even the record keeping part for me, and this is what I think is valuable potentially to people, is don't even write down your reasoning for why you wanted to do this. Like, just write down that you did it and what the ritual was, and that is a little bit more of a cleaner disillusion of that intent, and allows you to step into that space of forgetfulness and allowing that thing to come into material reality probably more rapidly. But I can't really say for sure. I think for me that's been helpful, and that was something that I wanted to
hmm.
share, is that divorcing yourself from the assumptions of what it's going to be is more helpful in getting a result that's lasting and more transformational.
It almost sounds when you say don't write the why, it's almost as you're saying don't seek justification for your
Or
actions
validation.
or validation. Yes, exactly. And capturing intent is essentially capturing the magical essence. So it's like you could even say that the ritual isn't important. The intent is more important because the container will just carry the intent. However, the structure does, carry a medium and an energy. So there is a lot to it, honestly. Um, Very interesting. One more thing,
And
asking
you've
the
all got to
question
you've got
why.
to find your way.
That's true, but there are different modalities for journaling. For example, asking yourself the question why you do things. So you could be something like, it could be used to debug certain mindsets. By keeping on asking the why question on and on relentlessly, you come at the seventh question, the seventh why, you come to an answer usually which is very revealing and very hard, very painful. And it's a different way of journaling. It's almost as if that's like proactive journaling. It's you're coming to you are inching yourself forward to a truth. Whereas magical journal record keeping is more of, look, it's this time, planets are like this, it's my mood is like this, it's the weather is like that. This is the series of rituals that I did. This is kind of what I took from it. This is like a major experience which I never had before. This is what I learned. This is what came to me. This part was again troubled with intrusive thoughts. You have
Yep.
to actually be as a scientist as rigorously as possible. You have to imagine you working, and I quote this straight from my teacher. You have to imagine yourself working at a top-notch pharmaceutical company, right? And you have to, yeah, there is this pill which you need to bring to market, and you have to take note of everything, how you held your wand, how much milligram of attention did you put into it, how deep were your breaths. Like the more rigorous you get, the more you get out of it. Now, this
That's true.
there's a balance in everything. There is a balance in everything. So don't do this. I mean, start good, start off well, but after a while, it will become, you will find your own rhythm in this whole thing. And then one has also need to find the discipline to reread the magical record, to extract things, to put it maybe digitally in a more proper format where it can be reflected against more often. And usually what this does is, like for me, it was actually kind of, you could say, revealed that if we look at our future, we see a wall. Like it's like we are flat in a flat universe, but if you project too much into the future, the the complexity becomes like a wall. It's like, oh my God, like how high is this mountain? And especially if your goals are like hard, or you are challenging yourself, or maybe your will, if you're doing your HGA work and there is this internal burning question of what would life be like if I would do X, but X is like way out of your comfort zone. What do? Well, you just put in a single step and you take note of it and you appreciate it. And I think by adding journaling to your ritual, you bring closure, like an even deeper earthy closure to the whole ritual. Because writing is essentially establishing a inert record, inert, so it's not moving anymore. That's the quality of earth. And if we take the Tetragrammaton seriously, doesn't matter which combination you get, like you're starting with fire, air, or water, you always finish in earth. So if you're gonna finish in earth, why not take a note? Why not add a piece of earth and like add a form to it and like just be proud of your work and maybe drink a coffee next to it if you really want to. But I really recommend people to do it. And funny enough, it's very hard for people to do it. I had a few pupils that I guided on this path, and it's insane how hard it is for them to explain it to them. Like you should be doing way more than just like drawing a little pentagram in the corner of a page that you did the LBRP. You should be analyzing what the LBRP does to you, or why it does to you. What happens when you change it up, when you look a different way. I mean, it should be like, and every like just like I'm telling this because I just know that there's an epidemic in flashiness of the occult, and the actual practice of the occult works so well that nobody wants to talk about it because it works so well. It's like it's shut up, like it's gun law, Sorry, I'm not sure. It's like works too well, man. Like shut up about it. That's kind of how it feels like.
Well, I think the nexus of what you're talking about here is an issue of inner dialogue, right? The faculty of inner dialogue and dialogue in general, right? We
Mm.
have been reduced at a societal level because of social media, because of the technology and the abuse of it, to making statements and shouting at each other instead of asking the questions. And so when you sit down and you say, I want you to ask yourself questions and write down in a journal some stuff about yourself, we're not trained that way. Like we are literally trained hours upon hours a day to shout into the void of the internet at each other, like talking at one another instead of asking engaging questions to another person. And so it becomes almost like invasive and intensely uncomfortable to ask yourself a simple question. And to do so on paper is like a whole nother level. You just told me like you want me to shove bamboo shoots up my fingernails. Like, like it's
Really?
it's terrifying to the modern ideology that like you need to look inside, you need to turn inward and start analyzing the self. That's looking in the mirror, and that is very scary when your entire life is mask after mask after mask. I don't want to
Absolutely.
look at myself in the mirror. I want to wear this mask because that's more comfortable for me. That's and so this is a challenge. It's an exceptional challenge, especially for any human being alive. But if you're attempting to do the great work, if you aren't asking those questions of self, then you need to analyze and rethink how you're doing things. I think, and I don't want to like seem like I'm coming down harder or calling people out on this, but it's vital to the process. It's absolutely vital to the process. Like part of my own record keeping is that at the end of the day, I ask myself a key set of questions as I'm laying down to go to sleep. How were you helpful today? What did you do for other people? How were you of service to other people? What do you feel like you could do better? Where do you feel like you misstepped? Where do you feel like you grew today? Where do you feel that you were challenged today? Just simple stuff like that. And it's about like a check-in for myself. So it's a mental notation. It happens almost as like a mental log before I drop into dreaming. And what that has done for me, at least from a magical record keeping standpoint, is it embeds that in my imaginal space right before I go into to dream. And more
Mm.
often than not, something will come up in my dreams that helps me relate to that. And I'll emerge from that time of incubation with some sort of direction or answer, or even some clarity around some sort of emotion or behavioral pattern that I'm dealing with at the time. And I'll go, oh, that's what I needed to be working on. And so like you said, there are many ways to do it. There's the physical way, there's a digital way, writing down in just in a Word document. Um, in it like for dreaming, for instance, whenever I was involved in lucid dreaming really heavily in my early 20s, my method of dream recall was I immediately woke and I told a friend about it. Like he was my dream journal.
Oh,
And
yes,
it really
yes.
did help because
Mm.
it's clarifying. I share it with another human being. And so there is some of that you can do. Like if you
Yeah,
have a
yeah. You
confidant,
reproduce
a
it. Yeah,
mentor, a person, you reproduce what it is that you have, you share that with a magical partner of some kind, that can become in a way a living grimoire of your work, right? And so
absolutely. Yeah.
I think there's multiple ways to do this. If it's too terrifying to sit down with a pen and paper and talk about your thoughts, because I know people have anxiety around that. It's something that's very evident.
There is this book by um, Alice Cameron, I think. Alice Cameron. She wrote a book called The Artist Way. I mean, it's
Oh
for sure
yes.
Cameron, but it's The Artist Way.
Hmm.
And she essentially describes this way of journaling where you free write every morning for 15 minutes. Just like you wake up,
Hmm.
you take up a piece of pencil or something, and you keep on, like, you just channel. I hate fucking writing. I hate the mornings. I don't want to be here. I don't know what to write. ABC, ABC, CDA, the penguins came from the mountains. Like, you keep on writing, 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 writing. And the idea is that your internal critic will be like, what the fuck are you doing? Are you an idiot? Like, and whatever the voices that our child parents, teachers, whoever aspirational authoritative figures pumped into us will keep shouting and trying to correct course while you are doing just free creative writing. And she has this practice. She describes this practice of morning rituals, morning minutes, like morning pages. That was it, morning pages.
Mm.
So every morning you would be filling up 3 pages every morning, no excuse, first thing out of bed. And it was a practice of mine for 3 years when I was in a very, very dark spot in my life. And what came out of those pages would be very close to like the most blackest thing that you can imagine. Now, obviously, is relative to me, so it's question, who knows? But it still healed a lot of me because suddenly there was this, oh, this came out of me and I don't agree with it. It came
Mm-hmm.
maybe from somewhere else. It doesn't resonate
Yep.
anymore. And then you can let go. And the letting go part is so hard because, this is your past. These people kept you safe. Huh? Huh? They
Mm-hmm.
kept you safe. So how hard is it to let go? Very hard. But it's a process. It's a way to, shine the light a little bit. Oh shit, it's like you open up the carpet. Oh shit, like better hide it. But because you already seen it, an internal process starts to kick in. Your subconscious starts to arrange shit. Your life starts to manifest a possibility to fix this little issue. And so by shining light even a little bit, you are you're inviting divinity essentially into your life to
Mm-hmm.
pry it up a little bit open, heal it, and you can then grow, I guess, grow as a person, be more of service.
It's true, yeah, and that just triggers within me just the thought of how you cannot pour with a full cup, or you can't receive anymore, right, with a full cup. And mentally speaking, mentally, emotionally, if we are clinging to all of these different pieces of non-self, it leaves very little room to maneuver magically. It leaves very little creative space or vacuum to draw energy in to then transmute and send out. And so
Yes.
it's such a big thing, being emotionally and mentally sound before engaging in these practices. They will help, sure, but they also will cause tremendous damage if you're not on good solid footing beforehand. And I think that's
Yeah.
that's a warning that has been heeded in past times. It's not as heated as it should be now, in my opinion. Once you have a firm footing mentally, emotionally, you've created some space, you've let go of things that are not you, that are maybe weighing you down, then things start to move a lot more smoothly.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
trim the fat, so to speak. You're like,
Mm.
I've got room now to create. I know what me is. I know what the essence is within me. But that's hard work too. So there's the little work, which is you and getting your head right, and you're getting your heart and your emotional IQ up, and then and stop making excuses for yourself. That's another one. But and then you have the space to do all this other really really fascinating, deeper inner work, and then
Mm.
outer work, that service work that we've both been talking about, is how am I going to give back? What am I going to be
That's
doing with this once I have identified my essence, myself? What am I going to do with it? Am I going to hide it, or am I going to let it shine? Am I going to let myself be present in the world truly? Let my divinity shine. Like that's where I think you eventually get. And you're never going to get there if you're holding on to things that aren't you. And so
exactly.
identifying them is the key piece of the magical record to me, is identifying what is not you.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly right. And just to how to say, just to battle back and bring in the notation back into this conversation. When we make a distinction, we are essentially saying no to what we distinct. Because a distinction
Mm.
is not reality. Reality is no distinction. It's all one,
Mm-hmm.
guys. Like we should be happy or something. But however, there are distinctions. Apparently, our culture has made a clear distinction between death and life, between cold and
Mm.
warm, like all the evolutionary forces that brought us here. They are massive, massive cultural distinctions, which if we don't respect them, we might die. So there is this physiological response to these aspects. But mathematically speaking, making a distinction means telling a lie. Whenever you write something, like for example, a song about love, it's just a lie. It's our attempt to point at what love might be. It's like
Right.
a no. It's so that like this. We not all know these expressions. Like don't confuse the finger for the moon. Don't
Yep.
confuse the draft for
That's
the
what I was gonna
sea.
bring up.
Don't confuse the map for the territory. It's the same thing. But how hard is it to demagnetize our consciousness from experience? It's very hard. We are very much intertwined with Maya, with the illusion of ebb and flow and the dynamics of our everyday life. And magic, first of all, allows us to differentiate subtle energies. Record keeping establishes a foundation so that you can separate experiences and group experiences, and eventually you evolve such that this becomes like an automatic thing for your consciousness. Automatically, because you're doing the practices and you're doing the record keeping and you analyze yourself, you ask who you are, know thyself. Suddenly, the pattern recognition system is so quick, and emotional quotient is like being able to discern your bullshit from somebody else's bullshit. But how easy is it to be entangled in somebody bullshit like on Twitter or X or something? Because it feels like personal, about you, about your land. So it's like what it's so hard, but it's not so hard anymore once you get into your practices. Meditation, for example, is a way to resolve and dissolve distinctions. So that you may do the accounting, essentially, the accounting. Hey, look, this is mine. This is mine. Please don't be like personally attacked. This is mine. I will work on it. Dear friend, but this is yours. I'm 100% sure. Oh shit, I cannot tell you that this is yours. Well, let me see if I can pull out the magician's trick, and I will keep talking with you for 2 years, and in 2 years you will get it. Haha, it's like the secret therapist in action.
Oh man. Yeah, we're it brings me to another irresponsible question. What is it,
Okay.
we with distinction. We
Mm-hmm.
are in this world
Mm-hmm.
distinguishing, like we are distinguishing creatures. That's part of what we
Yep.
do. It's not our being, but it is part of our doing, right? We're not human doings, we're human beings, but we're out here just doing it up. And
Mm-hmm.
we don't seem to be stopping the doing. And so this idea that we have that's very prevalent within esoteric communities is I want to get away from all these distinctions and I want to get back to unity. I don't think there's a point where we're ever going to be outside of the distinguishing. I think it's a mode and a function that we're just in. That's what we're doing now. And you can pause it. You can pause the distinctions for a time for yourself, but you're always going to have to re-engage with it. And so it's like a process of refining how we distinguish and whether or not that distinguishing causes suffering for us, right? Is
Interesting.
my practice of distinguishing every day harming myself or others?
Mm-hmm.
How can I further refine that process of distinguishing to no longer do that or to do it less, right?
Yes.
Because we're never going to turn it off. I don't think
No,
that
it's
that's
true.
in the wheelhouse. It's part of what we're here to do. It's part of what we're here to experience. And thus, I think it's another fool's errand to try and seek a time or seek a mode of being that isn't doing this. And so it's like a surrender of sorts, uh, a lack of resistance to it.
Exactly.
And
Mm-hmm.
like I think one of the quotes from one of my main teachers throughout time, which will irk a lot of people, I'm sure, Alan Watts. It says the only way to make sense out of this change is to plunge into it, to move with it, and join the dance. And for me, that has been really transformational. Is to surrender to it.
Yes.
Okay, this change, this impermanence is part of the game. I got to stop resisting it.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to flow with it, allow it to take me to the experience that I need to have. There are no accidents in this. So, whatever distinguishing set I'm in at this time is the one that I'm supposed to be in right now. And I need to do a better job of distinguishing what the message is for me right now instead of the opposite of further trying to distinguish it so that I can control and manipulate. How can I surrender to it? Act less resistant towards it. And then it is revealed within that resistance, within that surrender to that resistance, that I find, for myself at least, a lot more valuable nuggets than I do when I'm trying to run the whole show like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, so to speak.
Mm, mm. Very good, very good. Yeah, yes, yes, yes. Recently, I had a very profound conversation with somebody who knew George Spencer Brown at a conference,
Mm.
and he's asked me this question, which is a very irresponsible question. But yeah,
Yes.
he asked, "Do you believe that there is a divine plan, or don't you believe that there is a divine plan? You know, is there a divine plan, or is there not a divine plan?" And I told him that it depends from my point of view. You know, it depends on how I look at it. There are moments where I have to agree there is a divine plan. I have to let go. I have to go with the flow. And then there is moments where like, fuck, if I won't send this mail, send this and say no to this,
Mm-hmm.
it's the end. So it's like the end of my authorship in this world. So he told me exactly right, because both are true at the same time and they
Mm-hmm.
oscillate. They oscillate. There is a wave to it, just like there is a new moon, full moon, and quarters. There is a summer, winter. There are seasons, things change, things move in a cycle. And the same thing here. There is a God, there is free will, and there is no God, there is no free will. Most of the time we are atheists, especially when we're cooking food and there is this possibility of getting burned or cutting your fingers off. You're pretty much an atheist to the bone. However, when you only keep cooking as an atheist, the food will be like very like rigid. It's almost like cooked by a German. So you wouldn't want that, you know. You would love to have like some Italian, like some feeling, curviness, some vibe, you know, to your food. Taste it maybe. Like don't rely on the measurements alone. Taste it, feel it, get into the food. So see, oscillations. Absolutes are
Mm.
forbidden. Absolutes are forbidden. And it is also what the laws of form teaches, that there is no absolute direction and there are only two values. It's either nothing or it's a mark, a distinction. So that what you just said, how can I distinct better? What does it mean to
Mm-hmm.
make a better distinguished distinction today than, for example, what I did yesterday? Oh, but I don't want to distinct anymore because when I make a distinction, give me suffering, right? But the problem is if you won't be walking your own path, somebody else will be putting up distinctions which will influence your path. You cannot escape this material realm, which is based on physics, thermodynamics. You have to move forward, you have to put in action to get a reaction. It's just the way it is. And acceptance of the flow is what brings eventual happiness. And resistance against the flow, it's almost like I have this image in my mind right now, right? So there is this river, it flows beautifully. That's life. The river starts young, you know, at the top of the mountain. That's you being born.
Mm-hmm.
And you flow down the river through the creeks, through the crevices, the dams, and everything else until you go to the big ocean. The big ocean, that's
Mm-hmm.
unity, you know, that's, oh, I'm joining my brothers and sisters. All other rivers are the ocean. But your life, that's the river. Now imagine there is this piece of you, there's this piece of your river that's like, no, I don't want to go down the waterfall. Fuck this shit, you know? Like, fuck, no. And and so what happens is like dirt starts to accumulate there. There's like there are crevices in certain rivers where like water like dirt. There is like mud and like sponginess accumulating there. It stinks because there is no fresh water going through
Mm-hmm.
it. That's shadow. That's stuck
Yeah.
energy. That's the thing that you should be looking at. That's the thing that's when fear comes knocking at your door, it indicates it. If you are triggered, it says, "Guy, there is shit over here, like there's stuckness. Like I want to flow. I want to flow, but man, like all the voices in my head just keep on saying, ah, that's a little bit too, that's a little bit too, and there is like, depending on who you are, perfectionism, for example, is like killing me softly, but I try to dance with it. I try to establish the idea that perfection is something that's a direction, but I will never, like, I shouldn't be never judging my work on perfection because I'm just human. I can only live here. So there is this dance. Perfection exists. We want to make things perfect. And we iterate. We go to sleep and we iterate. So it's like very practical advice. And I love that you brought that up.
It's funny too. There's so much that a river does, right?
That's true.
There is authorship in the river, right? The river chooses where it's going to go, but the end destination is predetermined. It's going to go back to the ocean, right?
Exactly
Which way
right.
does it take? Does this river flood as it goes along? Does this river break through obstacles and author a new path for itself, or does it take the path of least resistance? So I wonder if you could go around and look at different rivers and determine personas around them. Like, well, this river is kind of like happy, and this is a river you really do not want to mess with, and that's kind of like how we
Probably.
are too. Like, there's an animistic element to all of it, and I think another way to answer your question is, how do I distinguish better? And I think of the idea of me as a mirror for the cosmos, for all of my interactions. If my mirror is dirty, then I am not able to clearly distinguish the qualities of somebody standing across from me, right? And every day we wake up in those iterations that you're talking about, and new piles of monkey shit get thrown on our mirror. And it's our responsibility, our authorship, to clean that mirror daily, to polish that mirror so
Yeah.
we have a clear reflection that isn't muddied, so that we're not making assumptions about what the other person's intent is, or uh, we're not clear about all these certain things about them or ourselves. And it starts with that work of getting really clear about who you are, right? Know thyself. That's the main tenet of everything that we talk about in occultism. Know thyself, because when you do, it becomes really translucent what everybody else is too. It's just you operating in a different mode. And how would you want to be treated in that moment? How would I want to be distinguished? If I'm sitting across from Adam, how do I think Adam wants to be distinguished by me in this process? That's how I think we get there, is by making sure that mirror is fucking pristine as we can get it. Now,
Mm.
that pristine is going to be different day to day, right?
Hmm.
Some days we have a shit covered mirror, and there's nothing we can do about it except for get a little window this
Yeah,
big,
yeah,
and
exactly.
that's the best we can do. Our best differs day to day, and so give yourself the space and compassion for the shit mirror that you're carrying around on that day.
I mean,
But I think
shit,
that's how
shit
we
is good
do it.
fertilizer, Shit is good fertilizer.
It's
Um,
just, yeah, clean it off and use it to grow in the garden,
grow,
right?
grow tomatoes in the middle.
Got a shit mirror, grow tomatoes. That's like a new one. Like, life gives you shit, grow
Grow
tomatoes.
tomatoes.
Lemons and lemonade. It's the new lemons and lemonade. Shit tomatoes.
Well, that's
Oh
beautiful.
boy.
That's
I
exactly
think
right.
that's almost a perfect place for us to end.
It actually is.
Well, yeah, I think Adam, this has been fantastic. I want to thank you so much for your time, for sharing so much of your wisdom, your knowledge, your experience with us here on the show. And I'm gonna have to have you back because this was too much fun. I love the conversations, what comes out of it. I feel like this feeds me more than anything, and in a way, it's a magical record for me because I find conversation magical. And
Hmm.
this ritual of engaging in a dialogue with another human, asking questions, doing that is a magical process in and of itself. So, thank you so much for sharing that with me, helping me clean my shit mirror and grow some tomatoes. And if everybody listening, follow Adam. Where do we do that? What would you like to point the listeners to, Adam?
Well, I am pretty much not online anymore for 1 year. However, I am planning to go back online and create some content um, on Adam underscore Black, and Black written with a V. So BLVCK, Adam Black, usually everywhere. So it's adamblack.com, Adam underscore Black. Whatever you use those two words with a V and the black, you should be able to find me. I have a portfolio, I do blog, write. I have like some funny sketches on Instagram. I usually post my artwork, like the ones that you can see behind me. I try to
Mm.
post them, usually like with a philosophical twist. So I try to like use words to say something about ongoing culture. So that's where you can find me.
Mm. Awesome. And then, of course, the Spellbook app is available on the app platforms. Is it iOS and Android?
Absolutely. Yep. It's iOS,
Yes.
Android. You can find it on thespellbook.app, or you can visit my website and you will see a link to it. Or if you just type in Spellbook, Spellbook or Spellbook Metaverse or Spellbook Social, even on the app stores, you will be able to download it. And just
Mm.
saying the app is in the works. It might or will be rebranded slightly to a different name, different icon, and a big update is coming. People have been asking me to implement data synchronization, so private data synchronization. For example, they want to go on their computer or they switch phones. How will they be able to ensure that a very sensitive note taking is kept private? So I've been working on
Their
this.
distinctions.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're working very hard to create this fully private, zero knowledge syncing platform. It's currently under testing. I'm a one-man team for now, so it requires a lot of scaffolding to make it work and testable. But it's coming probably end of September, so that's
Awesome.
also something to look out for.
I'm looking forward to it. I hope everybody who listens to this will download and play with the app and take the challenge of sitting with yourself for a minute and asking yourself those really hard, scary questions.
Great to
It was
it
so
was.
terrifying.
Thank you for having me, Frater O.D. It was very fun talking to you, and I learned also a lot from you. Just saying, I love being able to be in conversation with people who are doing the work, which is easy to say, but it's hard to do.
Yes, easy to talk about online, very, very, very difficult to do in practice. And it shows, by the way, for all of you out there.
You have been exposed. No, just
Hey,
saying.
it's a challenge, okay? I want you guys to be better. And so that's, that's where I'll end it because I care. It's because I care.